When did International Bat Day start? I'm not sure.
You know, I think I was reading on BCI's website, I think they started it, and I think it was back in somewhere around 2008 or 9. It was, you know, you can sort of create a holiday on this sort of global calendar and you just, you know, suggest it. And I guess there's some kind of criteria for them finding out if you're, you know, a real person. But it's been on there for at least 10 years, I think. So, and I think there's some other international bat days too on some other dates, but that's okay. We need more than one.
Yeah, that's true. One for each bat species.
Oh, wow. That's just way too many days.
In the year.
All right, we are now live on Facebook, so we're gonna get started. Thank you guys for everyone who has shown up so far. Welcome to the first ever Bat Appreciation webinar hosted by the Southwestern University Sustainability Office. My name is Veronica. I am the Sustainability Coordinator at Southwestern University. I have invited our friends and neighbors from Austin Bat Refuge, as well as a local Texan, bat conservationist Emily Stanford, to come and chat with us about how awesome bats are. So a little bit of background as to why we're doing this webinar in the first place. Last fall, Southwestern University got a Green Fund grant to purchase bat houses. We have 3 new bat houses from BatBnB, which is a company that makes sustainably made from eco cedar bat houses. And we have 3 houses total in 2 locations. They were installed in February, and hopefully we'll have some bats in there come late April, early May, so soon. The bat houses are currently next to the Southwestern Community Garden, as well as the golf course. But we were going to have an in-person reveal of the bat houses, but unfortunately we can't do that right now, given the current situation of the world. However, we did transition to a webinar because we felt like this was an appropriate time to talk about the importance of bats, especially since bats right now are being targeted as the known cause of COVID-19, and really the fault is that humans, not the bats themselves. So today we have Dianna, Lee, and Emily to chat with us, and I will go ahead and pass it off to Emily to show us her amazing film.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so I just, last year I got a grant to go and study how different cultures view bats and how their perceptions of bats influences bat conservation. So I got to travel to 9 countries and meet with all sorts of bat lovers and bat haters to learn about what they thought about bats. And this is the film that I came up with to summarize what I learned. So I hope you enjoy it. And it's about 13 minutes long, so I'll go ahead and play it. Oops. Can you see my screen? No. I have to present it, right?
We can see you.
Oh, okay. Actually, I'm not sure how to make my screen present. Sorry, I'm new to this. Do you know how to do that?
Is there a share screen?
Yeah, there's
on the bottom.
Oh, there it is. Hello.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay, can everyone see now?
Yes, we can see.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, great. Here we go.
Bat populations are in serious decline in almost every place where they've been investigated. The most serious threat to bats is failure to understand them.
That's what people feel. They feel they are not really good animals.
Bats are of huge economic importance throughout much of the world.
Bats actually do a lot for the environment, for the human race. They eat a lot of insects. They eat a lot of the pest insects. The bats at Congress Avenue Bridge, about 1.5 million bats during the summer. They're eating about 10 tons of insects every night, and that makes an enormous difference to the number of pest insects that are on the landscape that costs agriculture billions of dollars every year, both in crop loss and in the pesticides.
It's been conservatively calculated that bats are saving American farmers almost $23 billion a summer. And you got to keep track of the fact that this is at very reduced numbers, not what they could do if we had full populations of bats. Worldwide, there's a large number of economically important plants that depend on bats for pollination or seed dispersal. Just the tequila and mezcal production from agave plants that rely on bats for pollination is worth billions annually. Africa has the baobab tree. It's of great ecological importance to Southeast Asia. Bananas, without preserving those bats that they require for pollination, we could threaten one of the world's most important food crops. In Southeast Asia, there's probably no fruit more cherished than durian. Again, it sells for billions of dollars annually. And yet, you can't produce a durian fruit even in an orchard without bats to pollinate the flowers. Many of the most valued timber trees of Australia are dispersed or pollinated by bats.
They're incredibly important pollinators, as well as them being really important seed dispersers.
Clearly, just go around the world, name your place, and there's something of big importance that we might lose without bats.
But as important as bats are to our lives, we're losing them rapidly. And the main threat is us.
Main threats to bats all across the world will start with habitat destruction.
Because of deforestation, some of them are gone.
There's other threats as well. I mean, the bats get persecuted by people. The main one, yeah, is deforestation and persecution by people.
People don't know about them, so they're a little bit ready to fear them. And Western negative perceptions about bats, it's in our old stories and all those superstitions, all that sort of thing. Although I don't think a lot of people really take a lot of notice of that, but it's in our subconscious.
With majority of the nocturnal animals that they know very little about, they make myths. They actually think that they are evil and it's a bad omen.
They are evil animals which possibly attack people.
And our grandparents used to say, like, bats come in a house, they will catch your nose. So we are afraid lots from that.
We strongly consider it as a vampire. It's a bloodsucker.
They're psychopaths. I don't right there.
Out of roughly 1,400 species of bats, only 3 of the species are vampire bats, and they're only found in Latin America.
A lot of the myths are actually originated from the West. We don't have vampire bats in India, but still people will think of that. It's basically from either some movie or something that they've seen.
Sometimes my family gets scared. There are vampires there.
But why do people's perceptions of bats matter?
Years ago, Ted Fleming and I went to northwest Mexico to study the endangered leptonicterus bats pollinating cacti. We found that the people had burned their local roosts. When asked why, they said, "Oh, if a bat flies over you at night and urinates in your eye, you'll go blind." They really believed that. And this had led to burning several key roosts.
Having this underlying fear makes it hard for people to tolerate living with bats.
They stink.
Smell?
They stink.
They smell bad.
The smell of the bat.
The dirtiest creature on there makes the whole thing stinking.
We get some smell.
You know, guano can be smelly. Bats can be loud. Yeah.
Anything that impinges upon what in your home should be just you is sometimes envisaged negatively.
Tolerance of people has gone down and is having a lot of impact on bats that used to earlier live with people, but not anymore.
So if you find bats in your house, what do people do?
Normally we kill them. Straight away, no two ways about it.
My parents used to say, if you see it, we could kill it. If that bat is in your house, something bad is going to happen. Either they are going to die, maybe something bad is going to happen to the family.
If you find a bat in their house and something bad will happen to them, maybe they believe that someone will die in their family.
There are some superstitions that some people use them for witchcraft activities.
The fetuses of the bats can be used to blind someone to your intentions.
They can slap people when they're flying.
They can slap people. They can slap you. People believe that it's, they slap people. They are witches. They do hit people. Just believe.
Bats are a bad omen. Usually there is an issue with witchcraft involved and also black magic. So whenever people get to hear about bats, their first reaction is, let's kill this.
In the West, many people decide to kill bats because they're afraid of getting diseases like rabies from them. But getting rabies from bats is incredibly rare.
It's the rarest disease in America that only kills 1 to 2 people a year. We have a serious problem because of gross exaggeration of fear about bats. People will not protect what they fear.
So what are some ways that we can try to change people's opinions about bats?
Try and focus on education, because people don't care about laws.
Going and educating members of the public. Usually by the time you've spoken to someone, you've explained it to them, people calm down and they understand.
They don't know the good sides of bats and how they're useful to us.
Hopefully the education normalizes, working out what ways you can do to live with the flying foxes.
Education is by far the most effective approach. And now I'll give you a very good example. I go to this Tennessee cave owner, ask him for permission to study bats in his cave. And he says, he'd be delighted to have me study his bats. But while I'm there, kill all I can. He thought studying bats meant killing them, that you had to kill them and take them away.
Right.
And if I had bristled and told him the bats were valuable and gotten after him, I might have not even gotten permission to go on his property.
Mm-hmm.
But I just thanked him for permission to go study his bats. Went in the cave and I noticed that out in front he was growing potatoes. And when I went in the cave, I noticed potato beetle wings scattered all over the floor where bats had brought them in, eating them, and dropped the elytra on the floor. So I picked up a handful of those. When I came out, I pretended a little bit of ignorance and said, I'm trying to understand a bit better what these bats eat. I found these under the roost. Do you know what these are? Oh, them blank potato bugs. Them suckers eat potato bugs? I said, yeah, but that's not all they eat. They're probably eating corn earworm moths also, and maybe even a few mosquitoes. Well, how many insects do they eat in a night? Well, a colony that size probably eats 100 pounds of insects in a night. Oh, that's a lot of insects. I come back a month later, and I haven't said one thing about protecting his bats, never told him he should protect them, and he became a staunch bat conservationist without ever even having the word conservation mentioned. That's effective conservation.
So education is pretty powerful.
Education is incredibly powerful. I mean, at the same time that we saved 1.5 million bats here in Austin, we lost a colony of almost the same size in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. And the only difference was that here somebody knew their value and cared enough to communicate it effectively.
Of course, the classic education, like actually bats eat mosquitoes, all these things you can do, but they only ever reach as far as we could reach.
She's echolocating at 60 kilohertz. It's pretty remote for most people to say they're really important pollinators and seed dispersers. Unless people have a connection with an animal, it's very hard for them to value it and want to protect it.
But bats don't have much time to wait for our opinions to change. Bats are being electrocuted on power lines, caught on barbed wire, sliced in wind turbines, starved by deforestation, disturbed by light pollution, paralyzed by ticks, fried in heat waves, and decimated by the white nose syndrome. All of this, in addition to bats being disturbed, hunted, and persecuted by people. Entire colonies are collapsing. We're losing bats by the millions, and many species are becoming endangered and are facing extinction. But even so, there is still hope.
People are generally far more aware that bats have value. That doesn't mean that we don't still have very big problems. There's still a lot more we need to do. We can and should take pride in what we've accomplished thus far. And it should encourage us to have hope for the future. If so few of us can do so much in such a short period of time with so few resources, there must be some hope.
Okay. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yay.
Yay,
Awesome,
Emily. That was great.
Great film.
Thank you very
We'll
much.
see you at
I remember crying the first time I saw that.
Well,
So thank you for sharing that. Hopefully everyone had tissues with them.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions they'd like to ask about the film, feel free to drop it in the Q&A section.
All right. Diane and Lee, do you guys want to share your screen now?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
Let me just get there. Let's see. Sorry, I got a little bit lost there. I was really hoping that I wouldn't do that. All right, we're in Zoom. And let's go there. There we go. All right, I want to share my screen, but I need to get the PowerPoint up. So let's do this and click on that. Got it. All right. Just click things until it works. Yay! All right, I'm just going to pretend none of that happened. Let's go back to Freetail Pictures. Thank you guys so much, Veronica, Emily, and our group for being incredibly patient. So you heard me talk about it, I think, the Brazilian Mexican free-tailed bat that flies very quickly, very fast, faster than any other flying mammal or any other flying creature at all in level flight, and is a bat house bat. And this, I really want you to see, this is the day-old free-tailed pup named D-Day, found on June 6th of 2017. And I hope you could hear the little squeaks too. They're born hairless and completely naked and dependent on their mother. That bat, much to our happiness, was raised and released back at Congress Avenue Bridge. So another thing about free-tails is that they tend to get trapped frequently in buildings. Now, this particular video is actually an unusual circumstance where a red bat was trapped in a building, but the same point that I want to make, if it was a free-tail, is here in this video, and you can see what it is. When bats are trapped in buildings, people wonder sometimes why they would come down, say, on a crowded basketball court or in a large lighted warehouse like this one. Bats perceive a horizontal shiny surface as water. So what's happened there is this bat has assumed that that shiny floor was water. The bat is dehydrated after being trapped in that building for a long time. So that was an eastern red bat, and I'm going to show you some eastern red bat photos. This is one of the few bats in the world, really. Most bats, majority of bats have only one pup once a year, but the tree bats, like this eastern red, can have as many as 4, and in some cases even 5. The mother has 4 nipples instead of 2. She has 5 babies. That's kind of a problem for her and that 5th pup. This is a little video of some red bats hanging in a gang in our flight cage. These are pups that are getting ready to be released. This was last year. And they are just waiting for their mealworms up there, indicating that they're really pretty hungry. This is something that we have to teach bats to do in our flight cage. They have to learn how to drink on the wing. And this is a video showing how they do that. These are red bats coming in for a drink. We have these long water troughs that teach them how to do this. Now, this is something that happens occasionally when bats drink out of swimming pools. The bats that are young and learning how to be a successful adult bat sometimes don't do as good a job learning these things, and sometimes they get caught in pools, especially where there are shiny sides that don't have anything for them to grip onto with their feet or their thumbs. So we always recommend that people buy these. They're on Amazon. I think they're called frog logs, and there are all kinds of versions of these things, but all kinds of animals get trapped in pools. So it's really good to have something like this on the side of your pool so that animals can climb out if they get trapped. This is a Seminole bat, another common bat that we get in every summer. They're kind of more an eastern Texas bat, an East United States. They are bats that roost in pine trees. And so they really are interesting in the way they camouflage themselves. They curl up and look like a little pine cone up in a green pine tree. They're beautiful bats, similar to the red bats, but they have a beautiful kind of mahogany colored fur. And this is a classic Seminole bat. Red bats do it too, the way they hang in a tree or in our flight cage in this case. They wrap their tail blanket around themselves and they simply hang and look like a little dried up leaf. Or in the case of the Seminole bat, they look like a pine cone. This is an illustration of how difficult it is in our flight cage sometimes to find all the bats in the morning. We have a lot of bats in the summer roosting out there, and we have to go out in the morning and make sure we see as many bats as were there the night before. And you can imagine, look at how much they look like little brown leaves. The little mealworm eating bat is a little easier to pick out, but we got to count those bats every morning and make sure that they are all there and all doing okay. Northern yellow bats are bats that we get in frequently during the summer. They are also a foliage bat, but they roost in the dead fronds, the skirts under palm trees. They get injured, they get orphaned in the summer when people trim those skirts. So we want people to never trim them if at all possible, but certainly not in the summer when there are mother and baby bats roosting up in those palm skirts. We have some palm fronds in our bat flight cage. So these orphans that come in learn how to be successful adult yellow bats by roosting in the palm fronds that they'll see later when they're released in the wild. This is a southern yellow bat. They're northern and southern yellow bats. This one is a species that is a little bit smaller than the northerns, a little furrier. and also found occasionally in Austin, which is a great leap in their normal range, having to do presumably with climate change and people planting decorative palm trees. Cave myotis is a bat that a lot of people don't know about. It's kind of an rarely seen bat, which is strange in a way, because they are the second most numerous bat in Texas after Mexican free-tail bats. They're a beautiful little bat. They roost in caves, sometimes in the same caves or maybe railroad tunnels that free-tails do, but in a different part of the cave or tunnel where the temperature is a little bit cooler than the free-tails like. Also a bat house bat. So a second species of bat that you very frequently find in bat houses in Texas. Mothra is a little bat that we took in as a pup. In this picture on the right, this is about a day old pup, Mothra, the cave myotis. That's how she looked when we got her in. As she got a little older, learned how to fly, she looked like this. And we got to watch her take her very first flight in our flight cage. And I apologize for the bare hand. We don't typically like to show bats in a bare hand in videos or photos, but in this case, we're just illustrating how we care for them after they've been around for a while and we have a good sense of their personality and whether or not they're going to bite. Bats are generally very non-aggressive. And in this case, we had had this bat for a couple of months already and knew that she was not going to be a bite risk. Evening bats, another bat that is a bat house bat. These are beautiful little bats, very small bats. They roost in behind bark on trees, behind loose bark. They roost in hollow trees, hollow branches, like this little bat on the left. And this little bat came to us a few years ago in January. So by February, when I went out to feed this little bat and in our little habitat, I discovered that this bat had given birth on February 4th of that year. She was under a heating pad, nice and safe and well fed, and she figured it must be time to give birth. This is a safe place. So we had a baby that we were able to release right along with the mother later in the year. That was a very satisfying rehab situation for us. And this is just to show you how tiny bats can be when they're pups. These are little evening bat pups next to a dime and a Q-tip there. They're absolutely tiny. And what I love about this bat is that you can see in this picture, it's not a video, but look at the size of this baby bat's feet. Baby bats are born with almost fully developed feet. They are born, most of them, feet first, and that bat has to have feet that are going to cling onto the mother right away. That's why those feet are so well developed, because if they can't hold on to the mother or the cave wall, they're not going to survive. They're not going to grow up to be successful bats. Tricolored bats are not bat house bats, but they are one of the smallest bats in North America. And they're beautiful little bats. They roost in caves. They hibernate in caves. They're one of the bats that has been decimated by white nose syndrome, one of many species of bats. And this is, they sometimes roost in palm fronds. Now they do that in our flight cage. I honestly don't know if they do it in the wild. I have not read any literature that tells me they've been found in palm fronds, but I would suspect that they sometimes are in palm fronds in the wild. This is a neat picture. It's a blurry picture, but it's a cool illustration of what tricolored bats do when they catch insects. This is in our flight cage, and this tricolored bat has caught a moth. So she has wrapped her tail membrane right here, wrapped it around basically around her head. This is her foot, this is her ear and her other ear. And that moth is captured inside the tail membrane. So she used her tail membrane like a little pouch, and she just whipped it up to her mouth where she is eating that moth right now. They're acrobats. These little bats, all bats, when they're catching insects, do amazing acrobatic feats in midair. It's a bat that it's not a bat house bat. It's a very large bat. It's called a hoary bat, and that's spelled H-O-A-R-Y. Some people think it's the other spelling of hoary. So I have to explain that, especially to younger people, that this is a hoary bat, called that because of that beautiful frost on the tips of the bat's fur. This is hoarfrost. This is an illustration of a type of frost that occurs up north when when every little branch on a tree gets wet and then it freezes solid and white, and it's called hoarfrost. So that's what that bat's named after. It's a beautiful bat. It's large. It migrates through Austin twice a year. We don't know that this bat actually roosts right around the area. We only get them in occasionally and only during fall or spring migration. But it's a real treat. It's one of the largest bats in the United States and certainly one of the most beautiful. This was a real treat for us. This is a big brown bat. Her name is Queenie, and she is the only one we have ever gotten in here. We've been doing this for over 10 years. Big brown bats, if you look at their range map, they're all over the United States, certainly all over Texas. But the truth is they don't much care for this central Texas area. They see them more up in North Texas or down at the Gulf Coast. But this bat came to us from East Texas. This bat was found on the ground, unfortunately, with a wing injury, a elbow injury that prevents her release. But she's one of our education bats now. And she's an absolutely gorgeous bat, a large bat, much larger than most of the bats that we get in. This bat, also not a bat house bat, but one of the coolest bats in the world, honestly. This is a pallid bat. This bat's range is western United States, but right on the tip, right on the edge of the Austin area. We have not ever seen one in Austin, but I expect that we may see them in the future as their range continues to expand. It's a bat that actually eats scorpions and stinging insects by gleaning them off the ground. They actually will drop to the ground and pick up insects off the ground or off leaves on a bush. These bats are they're immune to the sting of scorpions and centipedes. So they're a really tough little bat. Actually not a little bat, they're fairly large. They also are nectar drinkers and fruit eaters. So they are amazing animals. They actually occupy several niches in feeding ecology. Occasionally these bats have been known to eat lizards and even small rodents. Beautiful and incredibly interesting bat species. So serious threats to bats. We know about threats like white nose syndrome. Hopefully everyone knows about that, and about wind turbine threats. Wind turbines are killing millions of bats on the landscape. And those are subjects that you can look up and read about. They're frightening. They're killing a lot of bats. But honestly, bats have as much or more of a problem with humans than they do with simply human fear and misinformation in the media. So please, when you read articles, think about it and make sure that what you're reading makes sense. Make sure that it's not just something that's meant to scare you. That's meant to get readers to come to your newspaper or your magazine or your website. I'm going to talk about rabies for a minute because it is one of the things that causes people to fear bats unnecessarily. Public health concerns and media reports are often exaggerated. When one bat is found to be rabid, suddenly people think that all of the bats in that area are going to be rabid. That's not what happens. CDC says most bats don't have rabies. Even bats that are easily caught and taken in for testing have a typically low percentage of being positive for rabies. Undetected bat bites are something you might read about. Some people say, and you'll read in lots of places, that you can be bitten by a bat and not know it. While I would never say that that is impossible, I would say that that is incredibly rare and unusual. And here's why. They have small, sharp teeth, and it feels very much like a needle jab. I think sometimes the undetected bat bite idea comes from this. This is my thumb after being bitten by an evening bat, a very small bat. I had to squeeze my thumb to get a little bit of blood out. So you can see 2 wounds there on my thumb. But after I wipe the blood away, you really can't see it. There's just a faint ghost of where that blood was. So I think that may be where that misinformation originated, is that you might not see a bat bite. It might not bleed. You'll feel it, but you may not see it and may mistakenly think, well, it wasn't a bat bite. But keep in mind, please, when you're bitten by a bat, you will see a bat in almost all circumstances. People get very frightened and think that bats might be almost like a phantom that are invisible and bite and not even be felt. And I think this is based on just the extreme fear that people have for so many reasons about bats. Most of those reasons being, unreasonable. Misinformation, context is key in all of this. This is an example that I like to use because it's a science article in a reputable on a reputable website and in a reputable magazine in 2012. The headline is the point here. That's the problem. Researchers point to bats as source for measles and mumps. Well, that's not untrue. However, and you have to get down a ways in the article to find it, but bats aren't going to give people measles and mumps. So it's in this, what they found in bats was something that was in basically the same family of viruses as human measles and mumps. It's a very, very different context. Here's one, since we're dealing with this all over again now with coronavirus and possibly undoing decades of bat conservation work. This is a recent headline in Newsweek. Bats harboring 6 new types of coronavirus. Scientists discover as humans risk exposure. Okay, that is not untrue. However, when you read down in this article, you have to get to the very last paragraph to find that those 6 coronaviruses are not necessarily anything that people can get. Bats and lots of other wildlife carry all kinds of viruses, including coronaviruses. The chances of those being passed on to humans are very, very small. So we have some information that we've been looking at and trying to understand ourselves. Like I said, we're not scientists. So we've been struggling to understand the science that's been coming out. And there's been a lot of science coming out about COVID-19. And it comes out one day and it changes the next as they learn more things about COVID-19. But there is a good amount of misleading headlines out there. What I've done here is just to give you some websites that you might want to go to, and some a little bit of a sample of what you'll find in these particular articles. There's a question and answer on an organization in the UK. That's a wonderful conservation organization. Did bats cause the COVID-19 pandemic? No, the pandemic was caused by people, and human activities that alter the environment are the reason for this particular pandemic. It's important to note that you are not going to get COVID-19 from any bat. You're going to get it from another human if you do get it. This is an article by Merlin Tuttle that puts a lot of good perspective on bats and viruses, and there's a link here to his organization where this particular article is. It's also in a magazine called Issues in Science and Technology, a magazine and a website. Here's some things to keep in mind about a new study, one of many new studies that's coming out. This one talks about the fact that bats, probably more viruses being found in bats because bats are being studied more than any other species, than any other order of wildlife. And some samples from this particular article are that to this day, bats have not been proven to be the cause of the outbreak. Yet the psychological link between bats and COVID-19 has already been created and solidified in many people's minds. So it's all again about unnecessary fear. And again, it's about a disease that can be fatal. So the fear can be extreme, just like it can be when people think that bats that all bats carry rabies, which they do not. Important to realize that bats are not carriers of rabies, like some bats may be carriers of this particular virus or other viruses. Bats, when they get rabies, die from it, usually quite quickly. They do not carry it without symptoms and are not able to pass it to people without being sick themselves. Another article that we found really interesting that just came out, I think, yesterday, again, about the idea that a lot of bats are being studied for viruses, far more than other animals. And so it makes sense that more viruses will be found in an animal that is being intensely studied. And it may be that bats have more viruses than other animals, but that has not been proven. It has not been found to be true by science yet. Protection for bats is minimal in the United States. In Europe, and particularly the UK, there's a lot more protection for bats than there is here. It varies again from state to state. We don't have any federal protection other than endangered species laws and threatened species laws, and an EPA act that does not allow the use of chemicals like pesticides to be used off-label. And since no pesticides are labeled to be used against bats, people cannot use them to poison bats. So on our website, on our blog link, we have collected some of the recent science and some of the opinions that we found around the web. And if you're interested in that, you are welcome to go there and take a look. And now to bat houses, which is really what this is all supposed to be about. And it's kind of the good news, the fun stuff about bats. And I really do hope that people are still interested in putting up bat houses as this COVID-19 continues to frighten us. Bat houses can be a lot of fun. It can be a great project once we are all able to get together in groups again. They're fun neighborhood projects or school projects. And you can build little ones like this, relatively small one, to very enormous ones like this. It's at Gainesville in Florida that there are actually 3 large bat houses near the university there. They did a lot of bat exclusion in a lot of buildings on the university campus, and to mitigate that exclusion, they erected these gigantic bat colonies, and they have hundreds of thousands of bats roosting in these. So it's a tourist attraction, just like Congress Avenue Bridge is. People like to go there during the summer at dusk and watch the bats fly out to feed on the insects. So the criteria that I mentioned before, best practices for bat houses, you can find those here on our website, and they are practices that were created at BCI many years ago, Bat Conservation International, where I worked for many years. So there are several things that you want to do correctly. I wish I could say that if you do them all correctly, you will get bats right away, but I can't say that. Still best to do it right. So we went over, took a long time to get here, but I really appreciate y'all who are still hanging in with us here. I'm going to, let's see, let me go back for a minute. Okay, any questions that we can answer? Are there questions? It looks like there are a few. How good is your memory? Someone wrote in, Don Stanko wrote in and said, I brought a bat to you to rehab a few years ago, and I've always wondered about her. I tell you what, Don, I'm gonna have to look that up, and I promise to get back to you and let you know, because my memory is unfortunately not very good. Mari Benden, an old friend of ours who we love, was on. Hi, Mari. Oh my goodness, wonderful that you tuned into us. We love you. Pamela Owen says we have good estimates of population sizes for Brazilian free-tailed bats, but are there any estimates for local populations of Laziura species? Those are the tree bat species. You know, that's a good question, and I do not have the answer for that. I'm not sure that there are good estimates for those bats, and nothing in the literature is coming to mind right now, but I'd love to check that out. You know, send us a question on our website, and we'd be happy to do a little research and get back to you on that, because I'd like to know the answer to that too.
And it looks like we have time for one more question, which was in the chat box from Paul, which is, do you find that different bats have very different personalities?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, they do. There are differences among species of bats, but there are differences among individuals in the same species. Absolutely. Mexican free-tailed bats, when you're looking at 1 million bats or more flying out of a roost, it's really fun to look at all those bats and think, you know, every one of those bats has a slightly different personality. And it really is true. Some of them are incredibly friendly and really want to engage with us. I have a couple of bats in a habitat that I'm caring for right now that like to run up to the open habitat and meet me with a mealworm. They don't want to wait for me to bring it in. They run up and want to grab it from me. And I think it's a form of enrichment for them. These are bats that are probably not releasable. They're living with other bats, but their life is not quite as full as it would be if they were wild bats. So thanks for asking that, because it really is absolutely true. They're not any different than other species of animals, or for that matter from humans, who can be, as we know, very, very different from one another. And dogs and cats, all animals have their own personalities.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Anything else?
Oh, I think that was all the questions.
Okay.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming to our Bat Appreciation webinar for Bat Appreciation Day. The webinar will be available online for the people who signed off when we had technical difficulties. They'll be able to rewatch the presentation towards the end. thank you so much for coming here today to chat with us. The presentation was amazing. The video documentary was amazing as well. And with that, we're going to sign off.
Thank you so much, Veronica. Thanks, Emily. Bye.
Great to see you again, Emily. Bye.
Yeah, you too, guys. Thanks for joining us, everyone.